flow.
Welcome to episode 159 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. The boys are back to kick off 2025. We went on a little bit of a hiatus, but we are officially back. The only problem is, as soon as we come back, the Leafs are now on a 3-game losing streak. They won 5 in a row. Now they've lost 3 in a row. John Tavares has now been placed on IR with a lower body injury. He's week to week. We'll talk about what kind of impact that might have. We'll talk about our thoughts on the Leafs right now, who currently sit in first place in the Atlantic Division, but are they as good as their record indicates? We'll dig into that. We'll look at the Eastern Conference playoff race, and then we'll talk about which Canadian team we think has the best chance to win the Stanley Cup as of right now. But before we get into all that, it is time to officially welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing today, man?
Anthony Bruno, absolutely ecstatic to be here, even though my vacation is over. The wife and I took the baby to sunny Florida for the week. You know what? It wasn't that warm. Kind of disappointed in the weather. We only got 2 beach days, but happy to get out of the Ottawa snow and into the sunshine. And I was able to catch a football game while I was down there. I saw my Notre Dame Fighting Irish qualify for the national championship game with a big win over Penn State. So it was a good trip. But like I said, there's no place I'd rather be than with you, Anthony Bruno.
Yeah, man, you're Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I knew that made your trip just a little bit sweeter.
Yeah, they have a chance on Monday. I don't know.
That's a different story, but at least they got there. Yeah, congrats, Lepore. Congrats, man.
It's amazing.
Well, let's dig into the hockey. So the Leafs right now, 3-game losing streak. I should mention that we are recording this episode before the Leafs play the New Jersey Devils on Thursday, January 16th. We're about an hour until puck drop here at the time of recording. So 3-game losing streak. By the time this goes up, maybe it's a 4-game losing streak. But Lepore, what are your thoughts on how this team is playing right now? Because obviously no Anthony Stolarz. Auston Matthews has returned from injury, but hasn't returned to his usual dominant self. And now John Tavares is on the shelf. So what do you make of this Leafs team right now?
You know, Bruno, for years, there's been the common take during the regular season among fans that I don't care about the regular season. The regular season doesn't matter. Show me in the playoffs. And I find that's usually the feeling when they're winning. People have that reaction. But when they're losing, the sky is falling. I am not bothered at all. For 2 reasons. Number one, there's ebbs and flows throughout a regular season. What I am glad, I don't know if you saw Kipper and Bourne the other day, and they were freaking out at this losing streak. And I kind of liked how the reaction among fans was, guys, they're first place in the division. Every team goes through lulls, this and that. And it was Mike Johnson the other day during the game. Like they were talking about like their lack of scoring. And he was saying, the fact that we're this surprised at it is a good thing. I mean, these things are going to happen once in a while. So I'm not bothered by it. If it gets to a 4, 5, 6-game losing streak, maybe I will. But at this point, a 3-game losing streak when I thought they had some bullshit calls against them. Those 2 Tavares penalties were absolutely fucking ridiculous. Like how those were called in an NHL game. Like those aren't penalties in non-contact hockey, let alone the best league in the world. So I'm not rattled or concerned or whatever terminology people want to use at all as far as where this team's going to be, but also because of how the Eastern Conference is shaping up. I look at teams around the conference and really, Bruno, the way it's going, like it's not going to be Florida because one of them, it looks like one of them is going to be 1, one of them is going to be 2. Is there anyone worth being really and truly afraid of? I mean, is it that much better of a matchup to get, to finish 1 and to get the second wild card than to get Boston or Tampa right now? It's debatable. right? Actually, did Boston fall out of that third? They fell out of third place, didn't they actually?
Yeah, Boston right now at the time we're recording, they're sitting in the first wild card spot.
Then who's third? It's
And sitting in third, I believe, is Tampa. Let me
yeah,
just
of
double
course.
check.
Yeah, what am I saying? Because Toronto, Florida, Tampa. I'm still on
Yeah,
Florida
there you
brain.
go. Tampa currently sitting in that third spot in the Atlantic. They have 4 games in hand on the Bruins, and they're both
Mm.
tied with 49 points.
Yeah, the Bruins, the Bruins are in that spot. But yeah, I've noticed they've played a lot more games than other teams. Like it doesn't look good for them. But yeah, I don't know, like, I had a total brain cramp there. But yeah, so really, if you are to finish first and get say Boston and one of these teams fighting for it, is that much better than getting Tampa? I don't know. Like to me, it doesn't matter. Like of course, I want home ice advantage in whatever series they're in, especially in the first round. But I'm really kind of I don't want to say checked out, Bruno, but I'm just kind of emotionally checked out as far as wins and losses go. Like this team is what they are. We're what 44, 45 games in. We've seen enough. And you hear the rants about, oh, they rely on goaltending. Well, fuck, fine. Yeah, they rely on goaltending. They have good goalies. God forbid the Leafs have a good goalie for the first time in my life, or good goalies, So I'm okay with it. The other thing is I think this team is going to be way different. And then once the trade deadline passes, they can't accept this lineup. Like there's not enough depth, I think, anyway. So that's another part of me that's kind of pushing any kind of negativity aside at the moment.
All right, so that's fair. I think that's a pretty level-headed take. I will say I agree with you on one thing, and that is that I am not concerned about this 3-game losing streak, which might turn into a 4-game losing streak, as I mentioned, by the time we post this podcast. But there are things that are concerning me. Number one, it just seems like when this team gets down in a game, based on their lack of scoring depth and based on their lack of scoring in general this season, it just feels like they can't make a comeback.
Mm.
Like, doesn't it feel like that when this team gets down? Unlike past seasons, let's say the Leafs got down by 2 or even 3 goals, it kind of always felt like they were in the game.
That's when you lay the bet. That's when you lay the bet when they were down 2-0 early on or something.
It was
Yeah.
like the classic, Leafs are out shooting their opponent 2-1. They're down a goal or two. They're going to come back and win this game. Whereas now, when this team gets down, their lack of scoring, their below average power play, like I'm never confident that they could make a comeback
Mm.
when they get down in a game. So that's something that's very concerning to me. You mentioned the goaltending. It's like, everyone's saying we're relying so much on goaltending. And sure, you're right. It's like, yes, you can rely on goaltending. They're on your roster. You're paying your goalies. Like, you're allowed to rely on your goaltending. But you're seeing now during this recent stretch without Anthony Stolarz that when the Leafs don't get good goaltending, they've run into some problems and they
Mm.
start losing some games. And then there's another thing that is still concerning me, and this is what I have been beating the drum on basically the entire season, and people can call me a nerd and tell me to go, you know what, myself,
Here
but
it comes.
the process stats, okay? And I know I sound like a loser talking about this stuff, but when I look at the numbers across the board, this is just not a very good hockey team. Like, I'm still not overly impressed when I look at the underlying numbers. Right now, Lepore, the Leafs, 22nd in expected goals for percentage, 24th in Corsi for percentage. So that's shot attempts. Okay. They're in the negative in both of those categories, 22nd and 24th in the league. 5-on-5 scoring. They're 14th in 5-on-5 goals for per 60. 18th in 5-on-5 expected goals for per 60. Even defensively, everyone wants to talk about how they're better defensively this year. Did you know that they are actually 20th in the league in 5-on-5 expected goals against per 60? The Leafs had a better 5-on-5 expected goals per 60 last season when we all thought that they were shittier defensively. So yeah, I do agree. I think the goaltending has really propped up this team. Now, I don't want to get totally bogged down in these numbers, but when I look at these stats and I kind of compare it to some of the other top teams in the league, I'm concerned. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty concerning to me. So as of right now, the Leafs are first place in the Atlantic Division. Everything's all great, on pace for 102 points. They've weathered some storms with Auston Matthews missing like 15 games, and now they're going to have to weather another storm with John Tavares out of the lineup. He's week to week with a lower body injury. But I'm just not overly impressed with what I've seen from this team this season.
Yeah, the expected goals one is weird to me because like everyone knows it doesn't, I can't adjust for talent. Okay. So right off the bat, everyone would agree the Leafs are a very talented roster with a lot of firepower, individual talent guys that can score. So as long as a game, as far as expected goals go, is close, the Leafs have a good chance to win because their guys are probably more talented than the other team's guys, and not all the time, but people know the point I'm trying to make. And my issue with expected goals, and it's kind of like the common advanced stats metric that's used like on the deserve a win meter and all that stuff. My issue with expected goals is number one, like I said, it doesn't adjust for talent. Okay. But number two, it's based on the complete body of work of the game as far as scoring chances go. And I'll give you an example. Okay. The Leafs are playing Boston. They go down the ice. They score. Okay. First shot, first scoring chance, high danger scoring chance. They score. Okay. Face off. Boston goes down the ice. Scoring chance, misses the net. Puck comes out in front. Scoring chance, goal. Okay. So the score is 1-1. But if you look at the expected goals now, it'll be like 66% in favor of Boston because they had two scoring chances. Toronto had one. Well, Toronto just happened to score on their first scoring chance. Right. And I'm not saying that's exactly what's happening to the Leafs. I'm just saying that's always kind of why I've kind of been like, as far as that stat goes. Like power play is another example. A team scores quick because it does. There's 5-on-5 expected goals and then total if it adjusts for power play and shorthanded. But power play is another example. Puck, you win the faceoff, puck goes to the point, tip in front, scores. Whereas another team can get a few chances before they score. So now it shows like, oh, they're dominating. It's like they're not dominating. They just happen to need more chances to score, and those chances occurred. And there's no way of knowing, had the team not scored on their first or second chance, what would have happened after that. Right. So as long as they're winning, like to me, like all this stuff too, Bruno, it doesn't matter because it can flip. It can flip positive and negative if the Leafs goalies start being terrible. We saw that with Jack Campbell a few years ago, where he was like the best goalie in the league the first 50, 60 games, and he fell off a cliff. And scoring wise, if this team started scoring, would we be surprised? No, we wouldn't be surprised. So to me, like, man, I really do mean it. And I sound like a cop out with this. All I care about is like where they are in the standings, individual games, these kind of stats, a small losing streak, a small winning streak. I don't care. I really don't care. And I think there's definitely a thing in the National Hockey League when it comes to sort of a maturity and a more veteran team. I think the Leafs are at the point now. When I say the Leafs, I mean the core. Like these guys have been in the league long enough now that a bad loss, they get blown out, or they lose on a bullshit call or a losing streak. I don't think they're rattled by it. I just think it's business. Move on. 82 games. We're not going to care. If the Leafs end up in the conference finals, are we going to give a shit about a 3-game losing streak in January? No. And I think the players are now kind of at that point, and you do see the younger teams sometimes, they just rip apart the regular season. It's like, yeah, because you almost care too much. You know what I mean? And people can call that lazy and not having the killer instinct. I just think it's the reality of a veteran group. They don't care. They don't care about small little things that happen throughout the season, and they probably don't care who they play. To be honest, like kind of like how I sat here and said, I really don't think they really and truly care who they play because the goal is not to win one round. It's to win the whole thing.
I hear where you're coming from. We've reached the point now where we've gone through so many playoff runs with this team and seen very similar results where, it kind of gets to the point where it's like, who gives a shit what the process looks like during the regular season? As long as this team is winning games, that's kind of all that matters. And as long as they win games in the playoffs, that's all that matters. So I hear you. That's fine. I want to see results as well. I just don't think this team is as good as maybe people think it is. It's time for a quick break for a word about Manscaped. It's 2025, gentlemen. This is the year to stop looking like crap. This is the year to finally take care of yourself. And the way that you're going to do that is by going to manscaped.com and buying the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. It is time to look good, feel good, and play good. Pick up the Lawnmower 5.0, the Weed Whacker. There are so many other amazing products, the Boxers. Everything that Manscaped does, I promise you, will either make you look better or feel better. And in turn, as I mentioned, you will play better. So go to manscaped.com and use our exclusive promo code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping. Lepore, Manscaped never disappoints.
Nope, they do not. And people hear me say all the time, go to manscaped.com, throw some items in your cart. Well, they've made it easy. We have the Performance Package 5.0. You only have to have one product in your cart to have a great start with Manscaped products. The best of the best. Don't fuck around, boys. Don't hesitate. Manscaped.com, 20% off with GFP 20 and free shipping. And you will not be disappointed with this package. It is undefeated, in my opinion.
Take care of yourselves in 2025, gentlemen. Go to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping using our exclusive code GFP20. That is code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. And does this concern you at all? Like, Auston Matthews has not looked like himself. Okay, he's been dealing with an injury all season. Over an 82-game season, if he had stayed fully healthy, he'd be on pace for 41 goals. Is this a concern to you as we head down the stretch and get into the playoffs that we might not see the normal dominant Matthews at all this season?
I mean, of course, like, you know, we have eyes and we're seeing Matthews not play at 100, but I actually thought since he came back from his injury, those first couple of games, he looked pretty good. This last 3 games, everyone's looked like shit. So I don't know, kind of tough to judge, but no, like, he's not at his best. And we know that. And at what point, what's weird to me is that, like, I think the Leafs management, I think the boardroom at MLSE, all they care about is the playoffs, and this team does in the playoffs. What's weird to me is that, okay, if it's not fully healed, whatever he has, if it's not fully healed, who cares? Sit him out. Let him go, even if it's LTIR. Like, let him sit out. Who cares? As long as we get into the playoffs and we can pull a Vegas and sign some bodies at the deadline. Tampa did it, and Matthews can be injected in the lineup in the playoffs. Like, whatever your strategy is. But all we care about is the playoffs. Put him on injury reserve. Get him healthy so he's healthy for the playoffs. I think that would be the only way to go. So the fact that they're not going there, I don't know what to make of it. Because it's like saying, well, he won't be fully healthy anyway. Like, is this like a permanent long-term thing that he'll always be fighting? And that's concerning to me. So on the way of how, like, his season's gone, it's tough to judge because he was clearly playing like hurt at the start of the season. Like I said, I've thought he's looked dangerous in these games back, except for the recent ones. But to me, that's the weirdest thing about this, is that, like, I think the Leafs organization would slam the door on it and be like, Austin, you're sitting until you're 100% because we don't give a shit about games 45 to 82. We care about trying to get 16 wins after that. So I don't know. And then maybe, am I giving him too much credit? Maybe he's telling them to go fuck themselves. He wants to play. They are trying to tell him that. I don't know, man. It's interesting. And it's situations like this where it fucking sucks that our favorite team's the Toronto Maple Leafs because they're Fort Knox and nothing gets out. And maybe we'll never know what this injury of Matthews is, or the conversations he's having with the medical staff and the coaching staff and the management about getting in the lineup or being taken out of the lineup.
I'm not going to lie. I'm concerned.
But Bruno, you're a mess today.
I'm concerned, and I've been saying this since the start of the season. I don't think people are taking this seriously enough. Like, if this guy is not able to play at the peak of his powers, this team isn't going to do shit in the playoffs. Okay, this is not a situation like the Tampa Bay Lightning when they won those back-to-back Stanley Cups and Steven Stamkos, that first cup run, basically missed the entire run outside of like, what did he play? One shift and he scored a goal. Like,
yeah,
this is not a situation where like, you know, again, not that this is the perfect comparison, but it's like, you know, can the Leafs do the same thing that the Lightning did without Steven Stamkos? Like, can they do that without Auston Matthews? I don't think there's any chance in hell they can do that. I understand Mitch Marner's having a great season, on pace for a career high, 110 points. Nylander statistically is having a good season. Same with Tavares. If Auston Matthews is not healthy and not playing at his best, I have no confidence in this team making a run in the playoffs. So I'm concerned. I don't know if he's ever going to be at full health this season. God forbid he never gets back to full health the rest of his career. I don't even want to go down that path. That's like terrifying to even think about. But this season in particular, I am a little bit scared. So let's transition now into the Eastern Conference playoff race. We talked a little bit about this earlier in the show. But right now, the Leafs sitting in first place. You mentioned you don't really care who they play in the first round. It looks like the Leafs and Panthers are going to finish 1-2 in the division. If the Leafs finish in second, obviously they're going to play whoever finishes third in the division. But if they stay where they are right now, they're going to play a wild card team. So what's your take right now just on the Eastern Conference playoff race in general? Because the Habs are making a charge. The Senators are right on the edge of a playoff spot. Boston's taking a step back. The Blue Jackets are on fire. What do you make of the East right now?
Well, I'm doing some quick math, Bruno. Yeah, no, it's not as bad as I thought. So Ottawa, just again, trying to figure this out with the teams not playing the same amount of games. Ottawa, I think, is in the second wild card spot based on points percentage. They're on pace for between 89 and 90 points. So I thought it might be a little less. I just think we have a case of the Eastern Conference isn't very good. Like, I think outside those top teams, it's not good. Like, man, even Toronto's division, like I'm seeing it here. So both Toronto and Florida have played 45 games. In 45 games, the Panthers have 20 regulation wins. 20. Like the Leafs have 23. But like looking down, I mean, it's not good. What I think Florida's got a really good. Florida's 4-0 in the shootout. So that's a couple points. Like no one's doing that well, with the exception of the fucking Capitals. I don't know what they had for breakfast over the summer. They all of a sudden decided to be the 2010 Capitals. And then I look at the teams fighting for the playoffs. I mean, I hate to be condescending, but if someone told you the Montreal Canadiens would be in the mix after 45 games, we tell people to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, there's no chance. I agree. I would say no chance in hell. That's a
Columbus, Boston after their start. The only team really people would say is probably Ottawa. People like, yeah, Ottawa should be fighting at least. Like those other teams like Detroit 2019 and 20. The Detroit Red Wings have played 43 games. They have 16 regulation wins. They're not that good.
So what you're saying is that the Eastern Conference stinks.
I think this is the worst I think this is the worst Eastern Conference in a long time. And then you look at the West, like the West right now you've LA with their record, like they'd play Edmonton in the first round. One of those two teams is going to go home, right? Like Colorado is in a wild card spot. And even beyond standings and whatever, like Vancouver 48 points in 43 games. That's a good team. They're on the outside looking in right now. In the East, the only teams really, like if it goes again based on points percentage, the only teams that will not make it are teams that we would have looked at earlier in the season or before the season started and been like, yeah, those teams are bad. All these teams fighting for it. The big surprise and what's messing everything up from last year is the Islanders and the Rangers. Because they were in the playoffs last year in the East, and the shit seasons they've had, it's kind of opened it up to these teams that I think most people would agree aren't very good. But do you think that when you look at those teams, okay, who do you give no chance to? Like right now, making the playoffs. Like Anthony Bruno would be shocked if that team made the playoffs.
Montreal, number one.
So Montreal more than Columbus?
Yeah, I think Columbus
Okay.
has more talent than
Okay.
Montreal. And maybe
Okay.
that's a crazy take. What people
No.
forget also about Columbus, they have some guys who have missed time as well. Not that like a guy like Igor Chinnikov. I'm not saying he's like some phenomenal player, but like he has missed a ton of the season. Kent Johnson, one of their young studs, like he missed like 10 to 12 games this season, could be more. Um, Zach Werenski's been playing out of his mind. Like they have some nice players, Columbus. I don't want to say they're like definitely more talented than Montreal, but I think if you just look at their roster in total, I think they have a little bit more talent than the Habs do. So listen, I'd still be pretty shocked if they make the playoffs over Ottawa, who's been knocking on the door every year and 7 straight years. They haven't made the damn playoffs. It's like I'm beating a dead horse at this point. But so yeah, I mean, okay, listen, I'll lump the Blue Jackets in there as well. Like if Montreal makes the playoffs, I'll be shocked. If Columbus makes it, I'll be shocked, but not as shocked as the Habs getting in. Other than that, I mean, the Flyers I think stink. Detroit, I don't think is going to get in.
No.
We're finally seeing the regression from the Bruins that we expected last season. The most shocking thing in the East, as you said this year, has been how good the Capitals have been. The Devils and the Hurricanes are right where we expected them to be. And then the other thing that you mentioned was the Rangers. You mentioned the Islanders as well, but I'll specifically point out the Rangers. Like they have fallen off a cliff.
You know what's weird about the Rangers, Bruno? I'm not counting them out because I do look at those teams and it's like who could go on a run. If the Rangers get their shit together and get whatever bullshit's going on in that locker room and with the management and people crying to the GM and all this other crap we're hearing, you could see the Rangers reeling off like a 6-game winning streak or something. And now it's totally different. And that's the type of team and again, how it doesn't matter where the Leafs finish in the standings. I like right now, honestly, like I look at the East, Bruno. This is gonna say, man, if someone told us that like Lepore was gonna blast this out on the podcast like last year, the year before, whatever, of all these teams in the mix, if I could pick one team I think I want the Leafs to play, I think it's Boston. I know it might sound crazy, but I'd rather have a Boston team that has not had a good season, can't seem to score, versus a team that is like gets in and they have nothing to lose, or like they're a surprise team, or if like the Rangers go on a run. You want to play the Rangers in the first round? A team that got hot. Like I just look at it and I'm like, Boston's that team that I would take. And who knows where they'll finish. I'll tell you right now, if you had to bet, is Boston making the playoffs?
That's a great question. Honestly, when I look at their numbers as well, I don't feel confident. But the thing is, I have more confidence in them than these other teams that haven't proven anything.
That's confirmation bias.
Yeah, like when I look at Boston, like it's bad. They can't score.
Bad.
They have a minus 22 goal differential.
Yes.
So the Habs, Senators, Blue Jackets, Red Wings, Flyers, Rangers, Islanders, and Sabres, they all have a better goal differential than the Boston Bruins. But the Bruins are ahead of all of them in the standings. You know what else is crazy? Even just looking at the Atlantic, like the Leafs are leading the Atlantic with a +8 goal differential. Like just to show you how crazy that is, the Capitals have a +46 goal differential leading the Metropolitan. The Jets have a +53 goal differential leading the Central, and Vegas is at +32 leading the Pacific. And then you have the Leafs and the Panthers +11 goal differential. The Lightning have a significantly better goal differential than both teams, but they sit in third in the division. So go figure, man.
I'm trying to think goals for. Fuck, Winnipeg scored 162 goals. Jesus. And 109 against. That is fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's insane.
Winnipeg is fucking good. Oh my God.
And
Winnipeg
you know what? That's the perfect segue into our next conversation. If you had to pick a Canadian team right now to win the Stanley Cup, who would it be?
It's tough. It's tough. You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to say Winnipeg. Fuck it.
You love the Jets, eh?
Yeah, I do like the Jets. They got the goalie, Kyle Connor, the other first period natural hat trick. Fuck out of here. I love that guy, man. I fucking love Kyle Connor. Just like that whole thing of how, it's almost the, you get the glory out of it, because for years I'm like, man, you got to watch Kyle Connor. Everyone's like, really? I'm like, yeah, Kyle Connor, watch this guy. He's going to be good. And now he's playing the way he's playing. So I feel like I get to strut everywhere and rock his jersey. But I think Winnipeg, because we talk about Edmonton, and that's like, that's like the default, because like all McDavid and whatever, but they're better. Like they're better top to bottom in depth. Like their D's better, their goalie's better, their forward depth is better. It's like the only thing you're hanging on to is the wall. McDavid's gonna fucking dominate with Draisaitl, and they're gonna win if they play each other. But I think both those teams have a shot. I still think Edmonton has a shot, but I think it's unfair and disrespectful to say right now that the pick is not the Jets.
Well, I'm going to be downright disrespectful, and I'm going to go to the default pick, because I would still take the Oilers right now. I think the Oilers are the best Canadian team. They got off to a rough start this season, but if you look at their last 23 games, and I get it, people are probably shocked how much I've been gushing about the Oilers over the last 365 days. But if you look at the last 23 games, the Oilers are 18-4-1, the best record in the NHL in that span. McDavid and Draisaitl look like their typical selves. I get that the depth hasn't been there. Like when you look at the Jets, they have an impressive when you go up and down, at least their lineup up front, they have nice depth. I don't love their decor, and obviously they have Hellebuck. I still have questions about their offense come playoff time, as much as they're scoring right now, and I still don't think that they could necessarily just ride Hellebuck to a Stanley Cup. As good as Hellebuck has been in his career, like we've seen him be absolutely terrible in some of these playoff runs. So yeah, I don't have a ton of confidence in Winnipeg. I think if Winnipeg played Edmonton in a 7-game series right now, I think the Oilers would be slight favorites. I would pick the Oilers to win that series. And right now, even if you look at all the books, the Oilers are the betting favorite to win the Stanley Cup. So yeah, Edmonton's my pick right now.
It's tough, man. Again, like I'm looking at the goal differential. The Jets have scored 17 more goals and have allowed 11 fewer than Edmonton. I look at that. Someone said that Winnipeg was going to score like a significant amount more goals than Edmonton.
But isn't it funny how neither of us mentioned the Leafs in that answer?
Yeah, but that's not unfair. I think it's, you're being a homer if you're saying like, based on what you've seen, you think the Leafs are better than the Jets, or like you said, how hot Edmonton's been lately. I mean, the team I've probably been most disappointed in is Vancouver. You look at that. I was looking at that line at the start of the season. I kind of thought they would kind of cruise into the playoffs, but fighting for their lives, man.
Yeah, they should still get in, but it has been a disappointing season considering how good they were last year.
You know what? That's a team I don't want to play in the first round. Like people forget they almost beat Edmonton last year.
Yeah, legit. The Canucks at full health, they have a ton of talent on paper. That's a tough out for any team in the playoffs.
Yeah. Again, the West is better than the East, Bruno.
Oh, 100% the West.
It's not even like we just mentioned those teams fighting for a playoff spot in the East, and then you have Vancouver. Like they're better than all those teams. Like objectively, like on paper anyway.
Yeah, those teams fighting for a playoff spot in the East. I don't think they're scaring anyone at this point, but is there anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap up this podcast?
Let's fucking get a W tonight, boys. All this negativity. Come on. 3-game losing streak. Again, even the emotional people like Lepore don't quite care yet. Don't make me start kind of caring. Right? Hold on to first place. And it's disappointing, man, because maybe I'm not getting it exactly right, but wasn't it like a week ago? The Leafs, like before this losing streak, what was it? The Leafs had like a 3-point lead in the division with 2 games in hand or something. Like they had games in hand with like a comfy lead, and now they're 1 point ahead. And again, they play tonight, but I'll say this, Bruno, and someone pointed it out to me, and then we'll wrap it up. And this is not me specifically talking about the Leafs, because like I see it across the league. The fucking Four Nations, man, has caused this like condensed schedule. I feel like teams are playing like every time I'm watching a game, whether it's the Leafs or someone else, they drop, it's their third game in 4 nights, or they've had this many games in this many days. Like it's rough, man. And maybe that's more of a reason why some of these teams are just kind of checking out during the regular season, because you can't stay dialed in while you're taking that much of a beating on your body. But I don't know. Like, the players always seem to want these kind of tournaments and stuff. I wonder if you would have asked them before the season started and asked them now if their tone would change because of all these games they're playing. Have the Leafs played the most games in the league? I thought I saw that. It's like 45 games.
Yeah, they're right up there. They've played 45.
Winnipeg's 40.
A couple teams that have played 46.
Okay, the lowest.
San Jose's played 46. The Penguins have played 46. The Bruins and the Devils have also played 46. But the Leafs are right behind those teams.
I'm pretty sure. What's the number? The Leafs have like 12 or 13 back-to-backs.
Yeah, that I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah,
but I think you're right. This condensed schedule's got to be taking a toll. Maybe that's why Florida and the Leafs are just like, fuck it. I mean, we're going to make the playoffs. Let's just kind of coast along here, manage our injuries, get through the Four Nations, and then dial it in come playoff time.
Oh, speaking about Florida, and again, everyone, we will wrap it up. So I was on the beach in Fort Lauderdale, and there's this famous shithole bar called the Elbow Room. And they're kind of known, like, and it is funny. So Bruno, I go to Florida quite often. The wife and I go down, and I'm not kidding. In previous times I've gone, you could bring up the Panthers and a lot of people wouldn't even know there was a hockey team in the area. Like, that's how quiet they were. And that's how how low the give a fuck meter was. But funny, you win the Stanley Cup, I'm seeing bumper stickers. I'm seeing caps like on the beach, this and that. In the bar, Stanley Cup champion banners, Florida Panthers. So this bar, the shithole bar on the beach, Elbow Room, has been open for like 100 years. And the Panthers, if I'm not mistaken, brought the Stanley Cup there when they won. So it's kind of become like a Florida watch party place. And they had the Bruins game on in the bar. And I was just like around, kind of like in the vicinity of the bar. And I noticed, I checked on my phone and Florida's down by one. Pulled the goalie. They score with like a second left. The bar fucking erupts. Right? Erupts. Everyone's going crazy. These people actually care, apparently. But then Boston scores in overtime. And it being Boston, you have Bruins fans there, and they're rocking their jerseys. They let the Florida fans fucking have it. It was fucking awesome. And being a Leaf fan, the person who's always pointed to, always laughed at, always chirped, everyone hates us. It was kind of fun to see that. Like, you got to think, these teams have played each other in the playoffs the last 2 years. And if you're a Bruins fan, like, how much do you fucking hate Florida after that team humiliated you, right? That is awesome. Awesome. I love to see it. And maybe I was wrong. Maybe Gary was on to something with keeping that team in Florida.
Would you look at that? The people of Florida finally know that the Panthers exist. Yeah. All it took was 30 years of existence, one Stanley Cup, and they finally know that the team exists.
Yeah.
No, I love that though. That's a great story. Lepore always down in Florida, man. Jeez, must be nice.
It's cheap flight, man. We get the direct flight from Ottawa this time of year. Not hard to get to. The nice, dollar man. Though, man.
Florida over here.
But the dollar Florida. Though, man. Oh my God,
we're getting a disaster.
We're getting hammered, man.
We are getting bludgeoned. Absolutely bludgeoned. Hopefully the Leafs don't get bludgeoned tonight by the New Jersey Devils. Well, by the time we post this, the game will probably be over, and we'll know if they're on a 4-game losing streak or finally snap that 3-game losing streak. But that's going to do it for episode 159 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. If you're a longtime listener or a new listener and you really enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review on either Apple or Spotify. It does wonders for the show. And if you're watching us on YouTube and really enjoyed the content, please consider smashing the like button. Leave a comment down below with your take. Subscribing to the channel as well, of course. And then ringing the notification bell if you want to know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. For Michael Lepore, I'm Anthony Bruno. Go Leafs, go. And we will see you in the next one.
Thanks, everyone.